to something we all take for granted, cooling and refrigeration, or perhaps the impact of having to do without it. The world is facing a triple crisis today. But we're going to need much more cooling and refrigeration as things get hotter, plus stickily high energy and food prices as supply chains are disrupted and recalibrated in a post-globalization world order. In the global south, where a very significant part of all power is supplied by diesel generators, it is simply too expensive to power cooling or refrigeration equipment. It's actually cheaper to accept food loss levels in the supply chain for perishable foods of as much as 65%. All of this is, of course, catastrophic for the rural economy, people's health, and for the planet, because spoiled food rots down and produces methane, which has a global warming potential 28 times that of CO2. In fact, according to the FAO, if food loss were a country, as you see here, it would be the 5th largest producer of GHGs at 1.8 gigatons per annum. Another inconvenient truth is that all engines are fundamentally inefficient, around 30%, in that the majority of the energy input is simply turned into heat, most of which is then lost in the exhaust. What if, by harnessing that waste heat, we could eliminate the operational cost of cooling and at the same time eliminate the emissions associated with burning fuel to power cooling equipment, and most importantly, substantially reduce those very high levels of food loss? This is what we do at ChillTech. We're a London-based company with patented technology allowing us to deliver cooling free at the point of use, with zero fuel cost and zero carbon impact. We do this by using the waste heat of the engine or generator as the heat source to power an absorption chiller, the unit which produces the chilled water for air conditioning or refrigeration. Our patents center on the design of a more efficient absorption system, which allows us to use direct waste heat. We don't have to go via hot water or steam to generate the cooling, unlike other technologies. This reduces cost, complexity, and footprint, making our technology deployable in smaller sizes, and is why, crucially, we can make it work for cooling in refrigerated transportation. Standard transport refrigeration units, TRUs, use at least 9,000 litres of diesel per annum. Our technology completely eliminates this cost, thereby solving the usual conundrum of climate tech, which is how to make it pay for itself and benefit the user, while benefiting the planet by delivering decarbonization in supply. The fuel savings are similar for our static chillers, where electrical chilling is provided from a diesel genset in the base case. Importantly, we also use a natural refrigerant, ammonia, which has zero global warming potential, unlike HFCs and HFO refrigerants, which must be phased out by 2047. Markets are cold chain, both cold storage and refrigerated transport, building cooling, hotels, schools, etc., microgrids, localized power, which is a major growth area in energy infrastructure, and temporary or leased power. All of our target markets are forecast to see robust growth over the coming years, but the biggest impact opportunity lies in the global south. Our technology will catalyze adoption of the cold chain, where there is almost none today. Extrapolating cold chain assets per capita in the EU or US to Africa and India alone implies a potential market size of over 4 million refrigerated trucks and 1 million cold hubs. And that's based on today's population. As we make sales and our units are in the market, their use will also generate substantial amounts of carbon credits for all the emissions they will prevent. One of our TRUs on a 40-foot trailer will conservatively save 350 tons of CO2 equivalent from being emitted each year in Africa or India, for example. The monetization of carbon credits is expected to generate a virtuous circle, allowing the company to reinvest carbon revenues to lower and eventually remove the capex barrier to entry by cooling as a service, CAT, thereby driving further adoption. There are carbon market price scenarios here you see on the right of the graph where such revenue really becomes the primary driver, although this is not our base case and we are not formally including it in our model. As for CAS, we intend to roll out this business model where the user pays a monthly use fee, assuming they're bankable. As you probably know, hardware servitization generally doubles the EBITDA margins over time. We're midway through a £1.5 million Series A round now and have just hired key production and commercial staff. We are market ready with our static chillers and soon to start field testing the TRU with our future customers in Africa under the IFC's Tech Emerge program. We'd be delighted to field any questions
Awesome. It looks very cool, pun intended. So, in terms of first questions, while bringing Pratibha back in here, what's your story? Why are you doing this? How did you get into this?
Well, it's a family story, actually. The chairman and CEO is one of my brothers. He's got a long history in startups, mostly in the TMT space, and also a background in the long distant past in corporate finance. I'm historically a commodity trader, agricultural commodities. So I've been involved in the agricultural supply chain across the world, really, but mostly in Eastern and Western Europe for 22 years before branching out into startup land. This is my second foray into upcycling and recycling and waste reduction. I had a startup in the insect protein space, upcycling fruit and vegetable waste. A bit early to the party there, unfortunately, but that's where I got interested in the carbon market, and I really like the intersection of commodity markets, which carbon is becoming, and in carbon finance, which is going to help drive this the decarbonisation and really catalyse the cold chain in the global south.
Why did you choose the cold chain? Why cold delivery versus, for instance, the most of the world is starting to want to put in AC and HVAC units, potentially having your oven power your air conditioner at home so that India doesn't have to suffer through terrible summers without AC.
I mean, it's one of our verticals here that you see. I'm still sharing my screen. I think I am, maybe not. Building cooling was the original use case of this technology. In fact, it was AC, but actually the catalyst to get us to focus on the cold chain was actually brought by the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank, who approached us. This was in the throes of COVID, actually, and said, "Hey, we've seen your technology. We think it can be put to very good use in the cold chain, static, cold rooms, cold stores, and more importantly, perhaps in the future, for refrigerated transportation." So it was really at their instigation that we went away over COVID, when we weren't able to actually physically install any projects anyway because you couldn't travel. Went away. Adapted the technology to a lower temperature range than aircon, and hence the deployment and the focus in the cold chain. Now that is, if you think about it, with what I just described, the cold chain is really where you get the most bang for your buck from an impact perspective, due to those levels of food waste and all the societal benefits that cascade from bringing the cold chain where there isn't any at the moment.
What percent of food waste is actually attributable to not having sufficient or requisite cold storage in the logistics system versus it's just taking too long, or people not eating the food, or something else happening that it goes bad?
Well, it's a good question. There are several stages in the supply chain, in the fresh produce cold chain. We're in the pre-consumer stage, so ex-farm to market, right? And there are intermediate stage sub-stages in that supply chain. So we are, with our static chillers and the refrigerated transportation, we're looking to facilitate a hub and spoke model for the cold chain. And then, the start of the supply chain, the ex-farm level, there are other solutions which are complementary. At harvest time, the produce does need to be pre-cooled to get the harvest heat out. So if it's been harvested in the heat of the day, you really need, it's very key to get that temperature down, not to refrigerated levels, but just to get the say 30 to 20 degrees level. And there are many very good and very deployable solutions out there, mostly deploying solar boxes at the farm level. So we intervene after that to get it from the farm to the aggregation point, then in the aggregation point, so the cold store, right? And then there's probably usually there's another transport leg, either to domestic markets, and we would hope to have more cold stores using our technology in the main food, fresh produce markets. And then if we're serving an export market, the export hubs, say in Tanzania, Kenya rather, for example, there are already being built state-of-the-art cold hubs at the export points, so Mombasa, Nairobi, etc.
Is the bigger opportunity with trucks or with ships?
Ships, we think there is an opportunity with ships, but we haven't tackled it yet. There's definitely, because there's a lot of, obviously there are huge engines burning marine fuel, which produce a lot of waste heat. But no, we haven't tackled that yet. The big opportunity, it's both. It's a hub and spoke model. You need the static and you need the refrigerated transportation. In terms of customer or prospective customer feedback, I would say that the level of excitement is higher for the refrigerated transportation leg, because you're reducing. The reason there isn't any is because no one can afford the fuel. 9,000 litres of diesel a year is a lot of money, and the supply chain is just set up such that the ex-farm price is depressed, reflecting the level of loss which is inherent in ambient transportation. So if we take that out, we're refrigerating it for nothing. It's a no-brainer for any merchant of fresh produce who's just by just sticking our unit on an insulated flatbed truck is immediately getting 20, 30, 40% more produce to market. It's an immediate boost to his bottom line.
So why are you still raising? Why is it not automatic already? Miles and miles. You had the IFC talks.
Matt, I'm sure you alluded to it earlier. I think even at the best of times, startup fundraising is not a simple process, and it hasn't gotten easier in recent months. But we have raised historically before this round. We had raised about £2 million, mostly equity, a bit of convertible debt. And as I said, we're halfway through this current Series A round. So we raised roughly £600,000. So we're about halfway through this.
Oh, that's a really small Series A.
Well, the nomenclature we were advised to call it Series A. I don't know what you call it.
Okay, 1.2 million is not a Series A that I know of.
You can best perhaps label it as pre-Series A for now. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Matt. Just a quick question, Alex, as you think about your regions of focus, these are, I'm just curious, what countries are you focusing right now and how are you looking to ramp out?
Yeah, good question. There's a blend. We're testing the initial focus, which is again directed by the IFC. They partnered us up with technology adopters in West Africa. So one is a Pan-African logistics company who wants to get into refrigerated transportation. It's currently just a regular ambient temperature logistics company, and the other is a grain and fertilizer handler who wants to get into cold stores and has process power on site, shedding heat, which we can use. So that's Africa. So initial focus is Africa, West and East, and we've just hired a commercial general manager for the African continent. But equally, and again, I was concentrating on that more from an impact perspective because that's obviously where the impact is concentrated. But meanwhile, we're also going to do a trial with a leading temporary and leased power operator in the UK on their hydrogen gensets in the new year. So that, if you like, is with an eye to future-proofing the technology in the unlikely event that diesel disappears, which I don't think anyone truly believes. But we can. The point is, we're trying to be heat source agnostic, right? So
yeah.
If you've got hydrogen engines, we can use them. Hydrogen gensets, we can use pyrolysis exhaust. We think we can use biomass burners as well. We haven't actually done it yet. We're trying to be heat source agnostic to cover all bases. And the missing link in that respect, excuse me, my dog just wandered in. The missing link in that respect is solar, and we haven't figured that out yet. But we think we know how to do it, but we haven't done the R&D yet. But that's really that will be the holy grail, covering all bases. For example, in a microgrid, any microgrid then could be plugged in plug into any microgrid, which almost all of which still have a significant part of diesel today.
What about data centers? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just one question before Matt. I love the question on data centers. Just curious, I mean, we're talking about quite a few local players in some of these markets that can really focus on addressing this pain point. What makes your technology different? And this speaks to the patent aspect of it. Like, what is the unique competitive edge that you present?
Well, there are several aspects to the patent, such as they are at the moment, and there will be more patents in the future, I believe, as new products are developed, notably the truck unit, which, despite being the same design as the static chiller, is a distinct product, so it probably has some patentable aspects to it as well. But it's the direct capture of the waste heat. As I said, I was rattling through it a bit, but I alluded to it in my run through. We're capturing the exhaust, plugging straight into, if you like, a thermal box, which is the generator, which provides the power for the heat exchange. So that's one aspect. Other large-scale industrial chillers, they all go through steam or hot water to do that. So that's one aspect, and then there's the internal workings of our absorption process with multiple heat exchangers, and it's the overall thermal efficiency of the unit, which is pretty high. And then water, and then it's also air cooled, which is another aspect which is quite novel. Most are water cooled, which imply having a water tower, which obviously increases your infrastructure footprint quite significantly, and obviously would make refrigerated transportation using that pretty impractical. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the pricing model? Like, how is your business model panning out at this point?
Yeah, I mean, there's a basic. Our financial model is a simple B2B sales financial model, but there are two overlays to that, which we have not integrated. And again, I alluded to them in my run through. One is certification. So removing the barrier to adoption of CapEx, just turning it into a monthly fee. Obviously, that requires balance sheet or an SPV. It requires bankability. So it's not something we can say, hey, here's exactly the cash flows from this servitization model, which we're going to do. We have to start with B2B simple sales, build a balance sheet, build bankability, and meanwhile cultivate counterparties who can provide that funding, and there are some. We've been talking to them already. So that's one overlay, the CAS, cooling as a service, and then the other one is carbon finance, which really can. I mean, I don't want to get too excited, but depending on what happens to the carbon price in the future, it could really become the tail wags the dog of our business, because you've got a very nice cumulative effect here, because each of our units, we think will have a 7 to 10 year lifespan. So as we sell more and more or deploy more and more on balance sheets, they keep on chugging away, keep on avoiding carbon, which is monetizable, and obviously that the vast majority of that revenue gets recycled into the business in order to drive adoption. Right? You have differentiated pricing in the global south, where you are generating those carbon credit revenues, versus in the developed world where you're just got a higher sticker price because you don't have any carbon revenue, right?
Yeah.
But that's all well and good. That's the function of carbon finance. That's what it should be doing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alex. Matt, you were talking about data centers.
Yeah, data centers need a ton of energy. They get real hot, but they actually have to stay pretty cold. Could this not be something for data centers?
It could be. My brother's the expert on this. He has some experience with data centers from the previous life. But from what I understand, at least in the West, if you like, in the developed world, the liability that you have to enter into when you have a data center cooling contract is just simply too dangerous for a small company like us. I.e., if anything goes wrong, your liability is quite uncapped.
Yeah.
There is, interestingly, a large data center project has come our way in Nigeria currently. So we have our ears open to it, but it's not an immediate focus.
Understood. And like you said before, and like we've said, there are definitely competitors on the market. I asked this question before, but I'll ask it again. If you fail, why will it be?
Did you ask me? Oh, you asked someone else that? Okay.
No, I asked someone else that. I'm just curious what your answer is.
Funny enough, in the global south, the biggest sort of existential risk to us is wholesale societal collapse, such that people aren't running their generators or trucks, so there's no waste heat to be had. If there's no waste heat to be had because things are so bad, and actually that by the way is a little bit the case in parts of Nigeria at the moment, and I think other parts of Africa soon, as if the energy prices stay high, stickily high, that is a risk. But then, is the whole world going to stop? Probably not. And as I said, we do have these verticals which are applicable in the developed world as well. So we obviously don't want to do that, but if we were forced to, we could refocus away again from the developing world, but it'd be out of the shame.
How much capital do you need to get to hit scale?
Well, I mentioned a very impressive TAM of 4 million refrigerated vehicles. Obviously, we're not pretending that we're going to take over the world of refrigerated transportation. Our 6-year plan has us selling at the end of it 10,000 units a year, roughly split 50-50 between the static chillers and the refrigerated truck units. In order to become self-sustaining, according to our model, we will need after this round we'll need about £6 million of total funding. Now that's not pure equity; that's any source. So I hope it will be a significant part of that will be carbon pre-finance, and hopefully some debt funding for a CAS vehicle
or grants even. Awesome.